Lonely gunslinger discovers incredible love on Christmas Day, when a surprising bride steps off the stagecoach. The wind howled like a pack of wolves as Jake leaned against the barn wall, the chill creeping through sturdy leather. He had spent years pushing away thoughts of warmth, of family, laughter, the home he once dreamed of. Life as a gunslinger had turned him into little more than a ghost of his former self, and each day blurred into the next, marked by hard labor and solitary nights. As Christmas approached, a heavy ache settled in his chest. Shadows of the love he lost haunted him, her face still vivid, the way she smiled, and the promise of a future now forever out of reach. The ranch felt colder than ever, clinging to memories instead of joy, the townsfolk's whispers prickling his skin like winter frost. When the stagecoach pulled into town that fateful morning, Jake instinctively reached for the gun at his hip, a habit ingrained in him long ago. But nothing could prepare him for the stark sight of Clara. She stepped out, a whirlwind of color and hope in a white dress that seemed entirely too bright for this barren landscape. A gasp rippled through the gathered crowd, and Jake's heart raced, not with excitement, but with dread. Who was this woman, and what had she escaped to find herself here? His past echoed loudly in his ears, calling out in defiance against the possibility of connection. The townsfolk eyed Clara with suspicion, the same way they viewed him, the gunslinger. They would never truly believe she belonged anywhere near him. The urge to retreat took hold of him, yet he stood frozen, wrestling with a mix of intrigue and fear. "What's the point?" a voice whispered within him. "Love is a curse, and it was better to remain alone, untouched by the pain that came with it." As Clara brushed her hair from her face, her gaze landed on him. For a moment there was an undeniable spark, a flicker of understanding that transcended their worlds, but he backed away, holding on to the bitterness that had shielded him from exposure. Jake entered the barn, his hands trembling as he gripped a pitchfork, trying to bury himself in work, yet unable to ignore the nagging sense of longing pulling at his chest. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The moment shattered when Clara's former fiancé arrived, slick and polished, a rude contrast to Jake's rugged exterior. The townsfolk lit up with glee at the sight, gossip intertwining with the wind, urging him to remain in the shadows. Each cautionary glance only reinforced Jake's self-doubt, an endless cycle of despair closing around him when he should have fled. Why would she choose him, the scarred gunslinger in the dirt, over a man cut out of ambition? Their future threatened by the past, Jake felt the weight of every regret crashing on him like an avalanche. Could he let Clara in, or would this moment slip away like all of them before? The thought of embracing his pain for the chance of belonging sent shivers down his spine. The wind howled, relentless and biting, mirroring the conflicts within, stirring up dark corners of his mind he wished to forget. He couldn't shake the feeling that destiny was unraveling before him, hammering at his heart as he stood at the precipice of something extraordinary. Would he dare cross the threshold into an uncertain future? As Jake's fear mingled with yearning, he realized how fragile love could be. Just like snowflakes in a storm so easily lost. Jake's heart thumped against his chest as he paced the barn, the aroma of hay mixed with the chill of winter. Clara's arrival had stirred something dormant within him, an ache he thought long buried, but it was quickly stifled by the roar of self-doubt. How could he possibly believe that a woman like her would choose the life of a gunslinger, a man scarred both inside and out? The very thought sent him deeper into turmoil. Each glance he stole toward the window brought Clara's bright dress into view, a stark contrast to his weathered world. As her laughter carried through the cold air, it was inexplicably joyous, yet felt like a distant song on the wind. He envied her confidence, her presence a direct challenge to the wall he had built around himself. Here began a reckoning, the shift that had the potential to change everything. If only he had the courage to embrace it. Jake closed his eyes, the pitchfork still gripped tightly in his hands. Memories surged forth, intermingling with the present. Thoughts of the family he once envisioned, children chasing each other around his legs, a kind-eyed partner at his side, surfaced briefly before being extinguished by the bitter recognition of his solitude. Was this fleeting dream worth the risk of getting hurt again? Each heartbeat echoed the refrain of his past mistakes. Not now. Not ever again. But Clara. Her smile, though faint through the frost-laden glass, ignited a flame of hope he hadn't dared to acknowledge. She deserved happiness. How could he stand by as she embraced the warmth of life while he remained ensnared in shadows? The decision to let her into his heart, if only a little, felt like an uncharted territory, stirring trepidation. Yet it beckoned profoundly. Hours dragged on as Jake wrestled with himself. He could hide indefinitely, but the thought of Clara choosing someone else, of any future they might have slipping through his fingers, sent a jolt through his spine. Despite his better instincts whispering caution, anger began simmering beneath the surface. Was he truly willing to let another man waltz in and take what he feared to reach out for? The heat of that realization burned away the fog of indecision that had clouded his mind, so he stepped outside. The bite of the winter air greeted him, invigorating yet daunting. Clara stood with her back to him, engaged in laughter with her former fiancé, a stark reminder of the life he believed he would never lead. Something inside him hardened, each rancorous thought intermingled with clarity, overwhelming his fears. Here was his moment, the horizon stretching before him like the vast prairie, full of potential, yet marred by uncertainty. With uncertain but determined steps he approached them, fists clenched on his sides. Clara turned, her expression shifting, surprise morphing to something he hoped was curiosity or perhaps even recognition. The young man with her looked at Jake in disdain, a subtle threat emanating from him that ignited the protector instinct embedded in Jake's gut. "Clara," he finally spoke, his voice rough like gravel yet resolute. He fought to project confidence, refusing to let doubt linger. "Can we talk?" The world around him faded, time suspending as her eyes met his. In that moment, it was no longer just about him. It was about the courage to embrace vulnerability, to confront his fears and seize that elusive connection that seemed possible. Whatever she might say next would determine the course of his heart and unveil the path he must choose. Jake stood on the brink, the cold wrapping around him yet burning within as if preparing him for the battle he was about to face. Not just for Clara, but for himself. Would he defend what could be, or let fear suffocate the possibilities? As her lips parted to respond, Jake felt the weight of every choice he had ever made crowding around them, anticipating the answer that could change everything forever. Clara's eyes widened, the unexpectedness of Jake's intrusion visibly weaving into her expression. However, the man beside her flared with irritation, arms crossing over his chest, a tension crackling between them like a winter storm waiting to unleash. Jake fought the impulse to retreat. This moment had come too far. He couldn't afford to crumble now. "Hey, Jake," Clara began, her voice a gentle distraction from the edgy silence that thrummed in the air. "I didn't expect—" "I just need a minute," he interrupted, desperation tinged in his tone. A half-step nearer took him away from the cold, the bitterness of isolation. Clara shifted, an indecipherable mix of surprise and something deeper flitting across her face. It was an openness he hadn't anticipated, but as he stared into her eyes, the hesitation began twisting in his core. He was trapped between his burgeoning resolve and the memory of his past, the pain that came with sharing oneself too intimately. "Can we step aside?" he urged, a plea that sounded ragged even to his own ears. He couldn't let the young man overshadow what mattered. The response played across her features, curiosity, empathy, and then determination. "Sure," she replied, subtly displacing herself from the fiancé's grip. As they moved away from the laughter and chatter that colored the winter scene, Jake's heart raced beneath the weight of unspoken words. Each heartbeat became a reminder. This was the moment where change could bloom, but only if he found the right words. "I don't want to interfere," he began, grappling with his thoughts. "But the way you laugh, it's like you're not just alive, you're thriving. I can't pretend that I don't see it." He inhaled deeply, feeling the chill of vulnerability pinprick his resolve. "I've spent too much time hiding from everything. I came out here thinking I could just let you go, watch you live your life." Her expression softened, brows knitting in thought. "Jake, it's okay. Life is complicated for everyone. You don't have to shy away. What do you really want?" He let her words echo in the silence, feeling the intensity of her gaze pinning him in place. What did he want? The question unspooled like a revelation, revealing layers of confusion and fear. But rather than collapse under the weight, a flicker of clarity ignited. "I want to believe that there's more for me than just this," he said, drawing the conviction from deep within. "I want to believe in happiness," he amended awkwardly but earnestly. "In relationships. I want to believe in you." Her eyes widened again, surprise painting her features but mingled with something hopeful, a mirrored reflection of his own craving. The gravity of her presence drew him even closer, eclipsing the past that threatened to choke him. "Then why not take a chance?" she urged gently, emboldening both herself and him. The young man's presence lingered like a threat in the back of Jake's mind. It felt as though a decision loomed, a dividing line between who he had been and who he could become. He only needed to cross it. "Maybe it's time I stopped letting fear dictate my every move," Jake replied, resolute, the panic in his chest transforming into resolve. He took one more step closer, urging the truth from the depths of his feelings. "I want to know if we can be more than what we are, if we can try despite the uncertainties." The moment stretched, the cold air laced with possibility. Her smile emerged like sunlight breaking through clouds, promising warmth amid the chilling world around them. Yet as he watched her process his heartfelt confession, a sense of dread washed over him. What if he had misread those signals? What if he wasn't enough? As Clara's expression shifted into one of determination, a sudden scoff broke through like thunder. It was the young man, advancing with a posture that radiated sarcasm and disrespect. "What's this little reunion about, Jake? You really think a gunslinger stands a chance with someone like her?" The jeer cut through the rhythm of his newfound hope, an unwelcome reminder of the very doubts that had kept Jake shackled for far too long. Facing Clara, he realized this external conflict had morphed into an internal battle that could redefine both personal values and strengths. "Stand back," Jake declared, voice even, redefining the measure of his own character. The culmination of his journey loomed near, the time to face not just external threats, but the very demons that had haunted him for years was drawing near. In that moment he understood that this wasn't just about Clara anymore. It was about reclaiming himself, confronting what he truly desired. Love without the heaviness of fear. Movement shifted between the three of them, each heartbeat pure potential, leading steadfastly toward an uncertain future. Jake inhaled deeply, bracing for what came next, resisting the gravitational pull of self-doubt that had held him captive for too long. He was ready to confront the depth of what he feared, not only for love, but for the prospect of becoming the man he always dreamed he could be. And then the confrontation truly began. The young man's laugh echoed through the frosty air, shattering the moment Jake had tried so hard to seize. With each barb that dripped from his words, frustration brewed within him. This bully was not merely a distraction. He embodied every insecurity Jake had ever harbored. Fighting to keep his composure, Jake felt flames of anger lick at his insides. "You don't know anything about me," Jake shot back, feeling empowered with each syllable. His thoughts raced. Who was this man to discredit him? Who was he to stand between him and the chance at happiness? The young man's smirk faded, replaced by a look of annoyance. "You think you're some kind of cowboy hero, don't you? Just because you blurted out a few heartfelt words." Clara's eyes darted between them, sensing the tension rising like storm clouds. This wasn't how the evening should go. They had found a moment of honesty amidst the chaos, and now it felt threatened. Yet instead of backing down, Jake allowed his frustration to reshape his focus. Perhaps this was his wake-up call, a nudge back to the very essence of why he had come here in the first place. "I may not be a hero," Jake declared, his voice steady, "but I refuse to let someone like you dictate how I feel about myself or what I want." The boldness surged through him like caffeine. He had long painted himself as the lonely man at the edge of everyone's happiness, but perhaps he could be more, someone worthy of a real connection. Swallowing his apprehension, he turned fully to Clara, ignoring the simmering tension with the young man behind him. Her gaze remained fixed on him, a blend of admiration and uncertainty threading through her expression. "What are you thinking?" she asked softly, her voice enveloping him in calmness, despite the storm brewing just beyond them. He took a moment crafting the words carefully, determined not to let doubt creep in. "I'm thinking that we all face challenges, some louder than others. I've spent too much time hiding from them, trying to fit into a mold that wasn't meant for me. You bring out something real in me, something brave, and I want to explore that." A flicker of hope ignited in her eyes, but Jake's resolve wavered as he glanced back at her fiancé. The young man's disdain was palpable, an unwelcome reminder that chasing this dream came with consequences. "Life isn't a fairy tale, Jake," he spat, clearly trying to rattle him. "You're just another phase, and she'll realize it soon enough. Then maybe it's time for her to decide that for herself." The statement hung in the air, charged with the weight of Jake's newfound courage. It wasn't about winning a battle. It was about allowing Clara to see what she deserved, the chance to choose without the influence of toxic envy or manipulation. He wanted to encourage her to embrace her own happiness, even if it meant she wouldn't choose him. Clara's brow furrowed, the volatility of emotions swirling within her as she considered the implications of his words. Jake's heart thudded loudly in his chest, presenting a different kind of fear. What if she chose to walk away? What if he had miscalculated everything? "Jake, Clara began, but before she could finish, the young man pushed forward, seizing the moment. "Let's be real here. You've got nothing to offer that she can't get from someone far more suitable." His eyes glinted with arrogance, but they also carried a hint of fear. He was aware that Jake was disrupting the delicate status quo. Jake gritted his teeth. Time stretched in eerie silence, the world around them dimmed. It was more than a confrontation. It was a test. Could he hold his ground, unshackled from fear and doubt? "It's not about what I can offer," Jake replied, conviction hardening his voice. "It's about the truth between us, and the possibility of happiness from taking a chance." As he said it, a clarity enveloped him. He felt a surge of confidence, realizing this moment could be pivotal, not only in shaping his relationship with Clara but also in realizing the man he aspired to be. In the corner of his mind, the young man's sarcasm still echoed, but Jake faced it now devoid of defeat. He was not just a gunslinger or a man defined by his past. He had a voice, a will, and a desire to claim a better future. The thought empowered him as he awaited Clara's next words. "Then let me choose," Clara said firmly, her tone a blend of resolution and tenderness. Jake's breath caught, the gravity of her statement crashing over him like waves. The audacity to move forward, to confront not just the young man but the barriers within himself, surged back to life. But before he could embrace the moment further, another wrench was thrown into the fray. "You think she'll choose you over me?" The young man scoffed, venom dripping from his tone. "You know who I am, and you're nothing." The barbs stung, yet they didn't pierce as they once would have. Jake understood that the challenge ahead was far greater than fighting for Clara. It was standing steadfast against all those who had ever defined him as nothing. He was ready for this confrontation, not just for Clara but for himself. The time had come to face the shadows of his past and define his future. As he stood tall, prepared for the battle ahead, the icy wind whipped around them, echoing the imminent storm of conflict that loomed. This moment, he realized, was just the beginning. What would happen next would redefine everything he thought he knew about himself and the kind of life he wanted to lead. Jake took a deliberate step closer to the young man, the distance between them shrinking to something intimate, charged with pent-up feelings and insecurities. The reality of what he faced loomed larger than the figure standing before him. It was not merely a battle for Clara's attention. It was a confrontation with everything that had ever made him doubt his worth. The young man's bravado stumbled for a fraction of a moment, as if the weight of Jake's presence was becoming too much to bear. Jake seized the opportunity, channeling the ferocity within him. "You don't get to define who I am," he asserted, his voice rising. "Your standard means nothing to me. What matters is how I choose to see myself and how I want to live my life." A flicker of uncertainty crossed the young man's face. Familiar feelings of inadequacy rose, but Jake was no longer that defeated version of himself. He had finally uncovered a fortress within his own mind, unyielding and resolute. This moment of vulnerability was not about convincing Clara of his worth. It was about believing it himself. "Why should I care about what you think?" Jake continued, his defiance building like waves crashing against a cliff. "You can't control the way she feels about me, or the choices that lie ahead." Clara, sensing the charged atmosphere, opened her mouth, but words escaped her. This wasn't her moment to intervene. It was Jake's to navigate, to assert his newfound self-awareness. With each word, Jake felt the shackles of his past loosening. A swell of realizations coursed through him. He was more than the sum of his disappointments. He was someone who was learning to stand firm, confronting not just this adversary, but also the long-standing beliefs that had crippled him for years. His mind raced, the echoes of self-doubt dissipating like smoke in the air. Had he been handling everything wrong? Had he allowed himself to be a mere spectator in his own life? It was time for a shift, and with that determination ignited in his gut, Jake turned his gaze beyond the immediate fray. "What do you really fear?" he challenged, focused not on winning an argument but on exposing the insecurities that had created this ugly confrontation. "Is it her love for me? Or is it the fear that you aren't enough?" The young man staggered back, caught off guard by the question. It was one that struck deep even for Jake, as he felt the conversation shift from a physical confrontation to a psychological awakening. Clara took a hesitant step toward Jake, and that simple motion ignited something within him. A flicker of encouragement, a sign that perhaps she was willing to fight for their connection too. "Maybe we all have our roles in this story," Jake said, calming his tone as he directed his words at Clara. "And maybe I'm not the perfect match for you, but I refuse to be categorized as less than someone else." With those words, he understood that this conversation was not just about proving himself, but also about liberating Clara from the chains that bound her to someone else's expectations. She deserved freedom to choose, just as he was learning to embrace his own liberation. "Jake," Clara began, her voice trembling with both uncertainty and depth. "You're more than I ever expected. You're brave for standing up." Jake's heart raced as he absorbed her words, gratefulness and longing battling within him. She wasn't just a spectator. She was part of this unfolding narrative, a co-author of the life he wished to build. "Then let's rewrite the ending together," he urged, as fresh resolve steeled him against the young man's previous taunts. They were writing their own version of this story, free from judgment and censorship. As the tension in the air grew thick, the shadow of confrontational silence hung around them, each gaze carrying the weight of untold feelings. Doubt still lingered in the young man's eyes, a mixture of frustration and fear for what he had risked losing. But Jake realized that the deeper moment wasn't just an adversarial exchange. It was a shared reckoning of personal growth. He was redefining not only how he viewed himself, but also encouraging Clara to make a decision that would lead to fulfillment. As she took a breath, preparing to respond to the whirlwind of emotions laid bare between them, the silence shattered with the loud crack of thunder in the distance, mirroring the unvoiced decisions that hung in the balance. Instinctively, Jake braced for what would follow, aware that they stood on the edge of a precipice, ready to leap into a life that demanded courage and authenticity. And as their eyes locked, the question lingered like the storm overhead. What choice would Clara make, and how would it transform everything Jake believed about love, vulnerability, and ultimately himself? Jake's heart pounded in his chest, but he forced himself to remain composed. Clara's gaze shifted, and with it, the weight of the world pressed on his shoulders. The storm was not merely outside. It raged within him, a chaotic mix of eagerness, fear, and hope. He had turned a corner in his life, embracing a sense of agency he had long denied himself. Yet, uncertainty still ghosted him, whispering remnants of doubt in the corners of his mind. "Jake," Clara began, her voice barely audible against the thunderous backdrop of nature's fury. He could see her deliberation, a conflict between insecurity and the potential for something more. His throat tightened with the realization that her choice could affect the trajectory of his newfound strength. He willed her to see the depth of his sincerity. "Maybe this is more than just about you and him," he said carefully, his words measured, encouraging her to reflect beyond the immediate stakes. "You have a voice. What do you want?" As he uttered the question, a subtle shift occurred within him, a recognition that vulnerability was not a weakness but a pathway to authentic connection. Clara paused, her eyes glistening with unspoken fears, her feelings bubbling beneath the surface. Jake fought a tremor of anxiety as he felt the universe hang in suspension. This moment was pivotal not only for Clara, but for him as well. It was time to embrace the discomfort of uncertainty, not as a barrier but as an invitation to deeper understanding. "What I want," Clara breathed, her voice wavering. "I want." The words hovered as the tension coiled tighter. Jake felt an urge to reach out to comfort her through the tempest of confusion. He realized now that true strength came from realizing one's vulnerabilities and not shying away from them. He had spent too long in the shadows of fear. It was time for both of them to step into the light despite how blinding it might be. As thunder cracked overhead again, illuminating the darkness, Jake sensed a mirror reflection forming in the storm, a fierce beauty arising from chaos. He glimpsed the inkling of hope he'd been searching for, the potential for a love unmarred by competition or low self-worth. "Clara," he urged gently, "this moment defines more than just the choice between us. It's about reclaiming who you are." He dared to envision a future forged on mutual respect, a bond that encouraged both of them to evolve beyond external validations. But with that came the reality that choices had consequences, and sometimes clarity came at the cost of discomfort. An unexpected flicker of resolve ignited within him as Clara turned her attention fully to him, the weight of decision binding them in a silent contract. She wasn't just weighing options, she was crafting her narrative, one that involved both him and the young man. That intertwining complexity stirred an awakening within Jake, a passion to not only stand strong but to inspire strength in others. Would he be someone Clara could lean on, or would he become another disappointment? The thought coursed through him like electricity. Every fear he had ever harbored clashed with this newfound courage. Could he be the man he aspired to be, for her or for himself? "Jake?" Clara finally spoke, her voice steadier now, a beacon amidst the thunderous gale. In those simple syllables he sensed that she was ready to choose, not just a person, but a path forward. Whatever her response held, he was prepared to embrace it. But just as he felt the resolve solidifying between them, her phone vibrated, breaking the poignant moment, yanking them back into reality. The tension coiling in the air shifted again, reminding him that the choices ahead could lead down divergent paths. The decision she made could elevate them both or fracture the tenuous bond they were rebuilding. "Clara," Jake murmured, knowing the stakes were suddenly heightened. "Whatever you decide, just know I'm here for you. I want you to choose with your heart." As she picked up the phone and her expression changed, Jake sensed an impending shift. Would this be the moment that drew them closer, or would it unravel all the progress they had just made? The whisper of fear gnawed at him, entwining with the determination that had brought him this far. The air crackled with anticipation, and Jake felt precariously close to a cliff of possibility. What happens next could define us, he thought, as he awaited her reply, knowing that the journey to his true self was only beginning. Jake's breath quickened as he observed the transformation on Clara's face. In an instant, the uncertainty that had shrouded them both seemed to crystallize into a definitive moment. She answered the phone, a simple tap, but the implications felt monumental. Each word exchanged, each shift in her expression, deepened the tension enveloping them. Wait. What? Clara's voice trembled as she listened. The radiant hope Jake had nurtured began to flicker. Every second felt elongated, a reminder of how decisions could shift lives in unforeseen ways. His internal landscape mirrored the tempest outside, turbulent and unpredictable. Seeing her absorb the news, Jake grappled with a swell of emotion. He felt an urge to intervene. Part of him wanted to shout through the phone at whoever was on the other end, to assert his presence, to contest their hold over Clara. But he resisted. This was her narrative, after all. He could only support her as she navigated the tumult. "Clara, it's okay," he said, even as his voice strained under the weight of his worry. "Whatever it is, I'm here." His commitment to her was painfully clear, yet it was paired with the realization that she now faced a decision with layers of complexity he could only begin to understand. Clara stepped a few paces away, almost unconsciously, creating a physical barrier that contrasted with the emotional connection they had just begun to forge. Her brows furrowed, and it was as if he could see the mechanisms inside her brain turning, weighing the consequences with each revelation. He wanted to point out that strength often required the kind of vulnerability that would allow her to choose her own truth. But the words felt inadequate. Instead, he focused on grounding himself, tapping into the reservoir of resolve he had unearthed when he decided to uphold his own worth. It was a strange form of empathy, trying to balance his own emotional stakes while giving her the space she needed to process. As she turned her back on him, speaking softly but urgently, Jake was confronted with the specter of helplessness. He could no longer shelter himself in uncertainty. He had just come to understand that both of them were at a crossroads, their choices entwined yet distinctly theirs to make. It was time to embody the growth he had fought so hard to claim. "Clara," he called out gently, attempting to draw her focus back to him, to the bond they had begun to build. "Remember, you're not alone in this. Whatever decision you make, it's still your decision to make." At that moment she turned back to him, the phone falling to her side. Each emotion that had shimmered in her eyes earlier returned, now mixed with confusion and an intense desire for clarity. Jake felt both dread and hope intertwining within him. It was a precarious balance, yet a necessary one for growth, both his and hers. "Jake," she started, the weight of her internal conflict evident in her voice. At that moment he understood something essential. Real courage wasn't only about facing challenges. It was about standing firm during the storms of others, letting their strength fuel your own. Clara inhaled deeply, gathering her thoughts. And for the first time, Jake dared to let a kernel of hope settle in his heart. Would this be the moment they both recognized the strength they could inspire in each other? What if... She paused, her eyes alight with a mixture of fear and hope. "What if I don't know what I want?" Jake felt that familiar pang of anxiety tugging at him again, yet it was laced with anticipation, because within that uncertainty lay the potential for profound discovery, not just for Clara, but for him too. The notion of navigating this together, of dismantling barriers one step at a time, promised a journey far richer than he had ever imagined. "Then let's figure it out together," he replied, a renewed strength filling his voice. "Let's turn this moment into something meaningful." Clara nodded, vulnerability sparking courage in her eyes. The air around them shifted, infused with the essence of mutual understanding and determination. But just as the storm outside began to recede, a loud knock reverberated through the sparse room, yanking them both back to reality. With a jolt, they turned towards the door, uncertainty flooding their expressions once more. Who could be interrupting this pivotal moment? Jake's heart raced anew, this time with agitation, not just for Clara's sake, but for the future they had begun to glimpse together. What awaited them beyond that door could shatter everything or pave the way to deeper connections still. Jake's instincts prickled as he and Clara exchanged anxious glances. There was a boundary forming, invisible, yet palpable. Just moments ago, they were united in their shared vulnerability, and now a mere knock reverberated through the room, threatening to unravel everything they had begun to construct. Clara drew a shaky breath, her uncertainty creeping back as tension twisted the air. The confidence that had bloomed between them was teetering on the edge of a precipice, and Jake felt the urgency to act. Striding towards the door, he hesitated, glancing back at Clara, whose eyes revealed a tumult of emotions. "Do you want me to answer it?" he asked, aware that every choice carried weight. Her hesitation hung in the air, but her slightly imperceptible nod told him all he needed. With resolution, he turned back, grasping the doorknob, feeling its chill seep into him as he braced for whatever lay beyond. As he opened the door, the encounter was instant and jarring. A figure stood before him, shadowed under the fading light, a tall man with distinctively sharp features and an air of authority. "Jake Miller?" he asked, his voice a deep rumble. Jake's heart raced. He sensed the weight of something more than a simple inquiry. "That's me," Jake replied cautiously, keeping his tone measured. His mind raced with the implications. Who was this man? And why was he here? "There's someone who wants to see you," the man stated, eyes flickering briefly over Jake's shoulder towards Clara. The tension coiled tighter, and Jake felt the need to protect this fragile moment they had carved out of chaos. "Who?" The single word was barely a whisper, but it burst with urgency. "Just come with me," the man insisted, his tone brooking no argument. Jake felt Clara's presence shift slightly behind him. He turned to find her silently weighing the situation, uncertainty oscillating with curiosity. She was searching for reassurance, and in that instant, Jake's resolve deepened. This wasn't only about facing whatever challenge awaited him. It was about showing Clara that he could stand firm in the face of it all. "Do you want me to go?" he asked Clara, his voice steady even as doubt wormed its way into his psyche. "I don't know," she admitted. "But I don't want you to face this alone." A small kernel of something, courage perhaps, blossomed inside Jake. "Then I won't." He turned back to the man at the door. "Lead the way." The stranger nodded slightly, stepping back to allow them passage. Jake found himself moving forward almost instinctively, his feet carrying him toward the unknown, while Clara followed closely, her presence both a comfort and a challenge. Their future, once a nebulous concept, suddenly felt tangible. The choices they faced were intertwined, each step dragging them deeper into the complexities of their own identities, their aspirations, and fears. Walking out into the night, Jake realized this was more than an unforeseen encounter. This was a pivotal moment in his journey toward understanding his own resilience. He had always been the type to stand at the sidelines, a spectator in his own life. Now he felt propelled by a sense of purpose. Not only did he need to brave whatever was coming, he needed to support Clara as she discovered pieces of herself. They followed the man through the dimly lit path, and with each step, Jake's internal mantra solidified. Uncertainty would not weaken him. It would be the crucible for growth. He could feel Clara's presence beside him, her apprehension mingling with anticipation, and he silently vowed to remain steadfast for her, to allow their shared strengths to illuminate this labyrinth of decisions and outcomes. Yet just as they arrived at the end of the path, Jake paused, captivated by the thought that churned in his mind. They were no longer just trying to figure it all out, but confronting shadows from his past that hung heavily over him. What if this is about more than just me? He dared to question, invoking a tension that echoed between them, like threads woven tightly together, holding the promise of connection yet to be forged. Clara looked at him, her eyes dancing with both fear and expectancy. "Then we face it together," she whispered, grounding them both in the gravity of their shared commitment. And as they stood there, poised on the brink of revelation and confrontation, a new knock reverberated through the night, a sound that felt almost like destiny itself, echoing with the promise of explosive change. As the knock reverberated in the thick night air, Jake's heart raced. The impending confrontation loomed over him like a thundercloud, charged with the energy of uncertainty and anticipation. He wrestled with his instincts, wanting to shield Clara from whatever lay ahead. But this was not just about her. It was about him breaking free from the chains of his past, The man gestured for them to follow, leading them into an alley shrouded in shadows. The streetlights flickered nervously above, illuminating only glimpses of their surroundings. Each step felt heavier than the last, laden with the weight of expectations and the fear of facing an unknown truth. Did he truly possess the strength to confront whatever awaited him? "Are you okay?" Clara's voice cut through the thick fog of his thoughts, pulling him back to the present. Her eyes revealed a mixture of concern and steadfastness, urging him to embrace the uncertainty enveloping them. "Yeah," Jake replied, though his pulse raced. "Just trying to figure out what this all means." The man led them to a decrepit door at the end of the alleyway. Without hesitation, he pushed it open, revealing a dimly lit room that felt intimate yet foreboding. The air inside carried the scent of old wood and secrets long buried. Suddenly, Jake felt a surge of doubt. Was he ready to unearth those secrets, knowing they might not only affect him but also Clara? "What if it's something I can't handle?" he whispered quietly, almost as if speaking it would make the fear more real. "Remember, we've agreed to face this together," Clara replied, her hand finding his in the darkness. The warmth of her grip fueled him with a sense of resilience he never thought he possessed. Perhaps it was time he dismantled the armor he wore, exposing both his vulnerabilities and strengths. The man gestured for them to proceed inside, his posture exuding authority. As they crossed the threshold, a figure sat in the shadows, steepling his fingers, an air of calm confidence radiating from him. Jake recognized the striking features: a high forehead, piercing eyes, and an unsettling calm about him. The room felt charged, heavy with unspoken history. "Jake Miller," the man in the shadows said, his voice smooth yet assertive. "I've been waiting for you." Jake's breath hitched, his pulse pounding. "Who are you?" he managed, trying to consume every detail of this encounter, to prepare himself for whatever came next. "I have something very important to discuss with you. It relates to your past, to your choices." Each word felt like an electric jolt, sending ripples through Jake's core. Past choices. The weight of them bore down heavily. Moments he had buried, hoping they'd remain hidden. "What are you implying?" Clara interjected, her voice sharpening with protective instinct. The tension hung thick, a palpable barrier as the shadowy figure leaned forward slightly, appraising them. "Implications are for the uncertain," he said. "What do you truly want, Jake? Are you ready to confront who you've been, to embrace who you could be?" Jake swallowed hard, the question reverberating within him. Who had he been? A passive observer, drifting through life, afraid to step into the light. The man's question was not merely about confronting some external force. It was about acknowledging all Jake had tried to flee from, and all he had the potential to become. With Clara's unwavering presence beside him, a revelation began to stir within. "I want to be more than what I've been," he declared, feeling the hot knot of determination tighten in his chest. A sense of clarity emerged just as he balled his fists, defiance sharpening his resolve. The man smiled slightly, as if Jake's answer satisfied some unspoken criterion. "Then let's begin," he said, gesturing invitingly towards the shadows that shrouded his figure. As Jake moved forward, a blend of fear and exhilaration intertwined. Regardless of where this would lead him, the journey had commenced. A journey toward confronting both the specters of his past and the burgeoning possibilities of his future. What lay ahead would not just be an exploration of his own limits, but perhaps a deeper understanding of Clara's complexities. They were both embarking on a path filled with revelations, and Jake felt the sense of urgency rocketing his heart into a storm. And then an unexpected noise echoed from beyond the room, a shattering crash, loud and jarring, ripping through the air like a thunderclap, signaling that the narrative was about to shift again. What were they really walking into? The sound of shattering glass lingered in the air like heavy smoke. Jake's heart raced as adrenaline surged through his veins, propelling him into a state of heightened awareness. This was no longer just a confrontation with his past. It was a test, an invitation into the unknown, a challenge that demanded he embrace his fears fully. "Stay behind me," he urged Clara, every protective instinct igniting within him. He focused on the shadows, narrowing his attention on the figure enveloped in uncertainty. What had started as a moment of self-discovery had now escalated into a quest for safety, an unforeseen trial pushing them to confront aspects of themselves they had long evaded. The figure in the room straightened, unease replacing calm confidence. "We must act quickly. What you seek isn't just inside. It's also out there," he said, nodding toward the door as another bang echoed through the dim space. Jake's pulse quickened as he clenched Clara's hand tighter. "What do you mean?" "There are challenges beyond these walls waiting for you. If you wish to forge your freedom, you must confront them," the figure replied cryptically. Jake's mind raced with images of his past haunting him, the specter of doubt entwining with a desperate need for resolution. But within that chaos, Clara's presence anchored him, reminding him of the potential that lay ahead. "Ready yourself, Jake," she said softly, squeezing his hand reassuringly, a moment of mutual understanding sparking between them. They were no longer just two individuals navigating their separate struggles. They were allies forging a path forward together. In that moment, clarity washed over him like a warm light through the icy darkness. With each awakening fear, a newfound resolve grew. This was no longer merely about confronting an external threat. It was about seizing the opportunity to rise above his past, to take decisive action not only for himself, but for the connection blooming between him and Clara. "I won't let my past define me," he declared, voice steady. "I will confront whatever is out there." The determination in his tone resonated with both Clara and the shadowy figure, creating an unbreakable bond of willingness to face the unknown. "Good," the figure acknowledged, a glimmer of respect evident in his demeanor. "Sometimes it's not just about defining who you are, but redefining it amidst the chaos." Jake felt the solid weight of the moment as the echoes of conflict died down, replaced by an unsettling calm. This was precisely what he needed: validation of his resolve, and a new understanding of the journey he was on. It was no longer about escaping. It was about entering fully into the life he desired. "Let's move," he asserted, beckoning Clara to follow him into the uncertain corridor ahead, letting the primordial instinct for adventure surge within him. They were moving towards something greater than themselves, towards discovery, strength, and a renewed chance at love. As they stepped into the light, shadows flickered behind them, but no longer felt threatening. Every choice made thus far had been leading to this moment, a culmination of all he had feared, faced, and now transformed. The door swung open, revealing the world outside, vibrant and pulsing with life. The shadows of the past still flickered at the corner of his vision, but there was clarity now. He was not the man he once was. He was stronger. He was hopeful. Together, Jake and Clara stepped beyond the threshold. The air hummed around them, charged with the essence of possibilities yet to come. This was not merely a fresh start. It was a commitment to their journey together, a pact they made to face the challenges, to embrace vulnerability, and to grow through a deepening connection. And in that moment, as they ventured into the unknown together, Jake conquered his internal landscape, proving that true courage was not the absence of fear, but the willingness to welcome love, opportunity, and the messiness of life. Future uncertainties faded beneath the weight of their shared determination, revealing the profound truth that they were both capable of achieving the happiness they had long sought. Jake experienced an outpouring of satisfaction that filled him with a sense of complete fulfillment. He had declared his worth not only to Clara but to himself, embodying the noble spirit of a man transformed. He looked at Clara, her face beaming with a newfound light. "Whatever comes next, I'm ready," he said firmly. She nodded, her eyes shimmering with understanding. As they walked side by side, Jake felt an unwavering confidence burgeon within him, a competence forged from conscious choices, and a belief that resilience would illuminate their journey ahead. They were not just surviving, they were living, embracing each moment as they marched towards their destiny. The world ahead was filled with uncertainty, and yet it was also abundant with potential. It was time to forge a new path, full of promise, a chance to defy the odds, to thrive, and to stand tall in the light of all they could achieve together. This was their moment. Now, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and support us. Your engagement makes a tremendous difference. Comment your reactions and theories about this transformative journey, as we all strive for our own breakthroughs together. Share this video instantly, with at least 5 friends who need to see this powerful conclusion. Don't wait. Even one more second to spread the message of hope and resilience. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.